Tao Fingerline's Math Industry, and this is part 2 of counting atoms in the periodic table of elements. So, what we're going to be going back to is we're going to find out what that step to simplify the formula is. We do a step that helps us simplify the formula. So, Ba3, parentheses, PO4, and that's the subscript for 2. This is going to be the formula for barium phosphate. So, the reason why that there is a subscript here and a subscript there is because that 2 is telling oxygen to multiply itself by 2. And it's also telling phosphorus that it's going to multiply by itself too. Because if we see that in a much larger form, we say Ba3 plus P phosphorus oxygen 4 and another phosphorus oxygen 4. And that's going to be the same thing as this, because 4 times 2, that's going to be 8. So now oxygen has 8 atoms, and phosphorus 1 times 2, because that nothing is going to be now a 2. Phosphorus is 2. So phosphorus right here and phosphorus right there is going to be understood as 2 atoms for phosphorus. And we add the oxygen 4 and oxygen 4 again, we're going to get O8. So oxygen is going to have 8 atoms. That number 2 is actually saving us work from rewriting the whole formula. Because if we didn't do that, then we were going to have to write it this way. Here's an example that you would do in case there are more than one molecule that you're working with. So, if we go back to H2O for a better understanding, if scientists want to use more than one molecule, because this whole formula represents one molecule, then they're going to add a number 2, which is going to be called a coefficient. So, a coefficient, like in mathematics, that 2x, that 2 is going to become the coefficient, because it's telling this that there are 2 x's, x plus x. That isn't for mathematics. That also applies to the elements for science, because that 2 is telling you that there are 2 molecules with H2O in it. So like, we say H2O plus H2O. We can write it like that, but scientists do not want to take that much time to write that. So, they're saying that this goes to multiply by 2, and that also multiplies by 2. So, since that there are 2 molecules of hydrogen, oxygen bonded together, we get hydrogen is now 4 atoms, and oxygen now has 2 atoms. This would happen if there's a coefficient, because that coefficient is telling you to double this in this scenario and tell you how many molecules there are, because there's no way many people want to write it in this form. Here is going to be our very last example in this video. So we have barium phosphate again. So this is going to be the formula for barium phosphate. But since that there is a number 2, that is telling us that there are 2 molecules with barium phosphate. So what we're going to have to do is multiply everything by 2. Like 2 multiplied by 3, that is going to be 6. But wait, there are parentheses right here. And wait, there is another subscript over here. So what we're going to have to do is before we have that coefficient multiply everything by 2, since there are 2 barium phosphate molecules, we're going to do this as usual and that as usual too. So now, oxygen, 4 times 2, that is going to be 8. Oxygen now has 8. And phosphorus only has 1 atom. So, phosphorus multiplied by 2, 1 times 2, phosphorus now has 2 atoms. So, what we're going to have to do with that now is multiply that coefficient by 2 for phosphorus, and by 0 for 8. So what we're going to have to do is 2 times 2. Phosphorus now has 4 atoms, and 2 times 8, oxygen has 16 atoms. So here is what we have. Barium has now 6 atoms. Phosphorus now has 4 atoms. And oxygen now has 16 atoms. We now have the ability to count how many atoms are in each element by learning in this video. Thank you for watching Taoping Airlines Math Industry. Like and subscribe. We're gonna be seeing what SpongeBob and Plankton do because they're gonna do some experimenting with a chemical reaction. Let's see what their molecule is.
5 gallons combustible cooking oil.
Yes. Karen, begin production.
1 sack coral dust, extra spicy. 1 bucket fire algae paste. And the final ingredient, disulfide.
Yes. Wait, how much disulfide?
The whole enchilada.
I had no idea this stuff was approved for restaurant use.
Oh, it's not. Lectin.
Crabs? Oh no.
Quite a volatile concoction, eh, Blanky?
Must be Explosive Patty Wednesday, eh, Mr. Krabs?
You got that right, boy.